Fat Boys, we are halfway home. Week 7 is come and gone. We are now officially on the back half. We'll get to a lot of that in terms of NFL stories. We actually had our last UK game. There's still a couple internationals. You notice there's a week break, and then I think we head to Germany, not next week, but the week after. We're also in for another kind of crazy situation, but you know what? That is more of a week 8 issue. First, let's talk about week 7. I will admit this week was a little bit tricky for me to be focused as I'm wrapping up the week 7 games and thinking we're now on kind of the back 9 or back 7, I guess. And this is officially midseason for fantasy football. I was also not surprisingly trying to watch game 7 as the Monday Nighters were going on. So while I was pretty pumped up about baseball, it did get me thinking a little bit how much baseball sometimes gets crapped on. Now, I'm not going to go on a huge tangent because I understand if you're here, you probably at least like football. You might also like baseball. But I think sometimes the leagues with like a lot of games, especially baseball, but you can throw basketball in too, get crapped on for being run not so well because the regular season can get a little bit dry. Especially baseball over the summer. We take it for granted because there's so many games. And yet the NFL gets all this credit for how the league is run. And I gotta say, this week it was really highlighted. I don't think the NFL has run well at all. And I know that's not shocking. Some people have a very similar opinion. But it's like if other sports are selling lemonade, legitimately the NFL is selling cocaine. They don't need to sell it. It is just a product that is super easy to gamble on. We've talked about this before. I know I'm not the first and only one to say it, but there's a lot of people in these leagues that couldn't really walk me through basic defensive sets in football, but know what a good fantasy line is and want to beat their friends in something. So I think just because it is a fun product doesn't mean it's being sold a whole lot better. And the reason I went on this tangent is I'm one of the few idiots that over here on this side of the world, I actually got up to follow some of the early games. So when I say early, I'm talking about the 1 o'clock East Coast. And they all sucked. But if you looked at the schedule, it wasn't a shock that they sucked. I mean, we could go back to my comment last week saying just because it's close doesn't make it good. And Jets Carolina was like the embodiment of this. I mean, if you score twice, well, for the Giants 3 times, they don't make their kicks, but 14, 15 points is going to win a game. That doesn't make it awesome. Like, name one play in that game. Try and think of one. Not going to happen. And it's not like a shot. Cleveland, Miami, I mean, it was played in a hurricane. I knew it was going to be garbage, and I'm a Browns fan. In fact, I'm actually mad that they won because it's mid-season. I'm already pissed that it cost us a pick. The 4 o'clocks, though, the late games, those were much, much better. And weirdly enough, the Dallas-Washington game, which is probably the game I was the most excited about, was the worst one. But at least we had some close calls, some comebacks, etc. So it wasn't like necessarily there was no bad games. In fact, a lot of the games were entertaining. Just maybe spread them out a little bit and actually get to enjoy some of the good games instead of trying to put them all at nights. I mean, people back in North America, we're lucky out here. I get one subscription to DAZN or DAZN or whatever you want to call it, and I get all the games. From what I understand, if you're in North America, it's 6 subscriptions or something you need to get all of these games. And there's no guarantee that they're going to be any good. Even if, take the Thursday nighter, if you're thinking that was an awesome game, you probably didn't necessarily watch it. It was entertaining, but it wasn't great football. I mean, Mike Tomlin is supposed to be this great football mind, and I really honestly think that he was, but on the other side, we have a failed Browns quarterback in Flacco who doesn't know the playbook. And actually, that's not an insult. He said it afterwards. He can't understand Zach Taylor's voice in his head, so he doesn't know what plays are supposed to be called. So he's just like Vince Vaughn and Wedding Crash, just yelling hot route and essentially throwing it to the best receiver in the game. 23 targets and 16 receptions. He's not even trying to pretend that he was trying to run an offense. He just threw in some audibles, pointed to someone, and gave it to the best guy on the field. And Pittsburgh is supposed to be this phenomenal defensive front, not this year, but in general, in theory, they're supposed to be this great defense, and they couldn't figure that one out. I'm starting to wonder if maybe Rodgers was lying and maybe he made the whole team get all vaccinated. And maybe they're now on the spectrum, because I've seen more adaptability from NPC characters from old video games. You got to know, you got to make some kind of a read. They were not even trying to pretend they weren't just forcing him the ball. You got to stop something. Anywho, I'm not really sure if it was my comparison to baseball or the fact that, you know, again, I'm not going to make it all about the Jays. And you know I want to make it all about the Jays, but let me have this because I'm not so sure the World Series is going to go super well. Football was super entertaining this week. I still dug it. I still liked it, but I don't know if it was actually what I'd consider good football, save for a couple games. We'll see if Week 8 has any kind of way of changing this. but I would say maybe not. We are walking into Buyapalooza. This is the only week, I believe, that has 6 teams on a bye. But you know what? We'll get to that when we get to the post-game stuff. First, let's maybe talk about week 7 a little bit and see how that affected our leagues. Top score of the week goes to Whalen against the Whalens. Got a little bit of a difficulty in terms of name base. Now, Underhill, unlucky, buddy, because this is now 3 losses in a row. Now, some of those you deserved in terms of lower score. This one you didn't. You definitely had some people beat this week. Almost 140 is going to win you most matchups, but not when the guy's almost 170. So not surprisingly, we did have a lot of people in the top 5 in this matchup. Underhill, we'll start with you. Unfortunate with Jaden Daniels, didn't quite make it all the way through the game. You did have the wide receiver 4 in Allen. You also had a battle of the tight ends. Tight end 4 in Ferguson, our very own Jake Ferguson, against Trey McBride, who was the tight end 3, but our tight end 2 for a couple weeks in a row now, at least a top 5 cracker no one has in Pat Fryermuth. That was effectively your push. You did have the kicker 3 as well, Underhill, but your bench not as good. Before we get to Whalen's successes, let's celebrate his failures first. Not failure at all, but wide receiver 2 was on the bench. Running back 5 was on the bench, but don't worry, because wide receiver 1 was played. Running back 2 was played, and I already mentioned his tight end. So overall, he didn't need all the points. Whalen, this is now not the first time I have said this, but you are our number 1 overall seed, and you won the week. Not a bad combo to have. Underhill, like I said, 3 in a row you've lost, but you're still top 3. If you can end the skid, you can contain some damage. But if you keep losing, you're going to start to lose your spot. In another match where both have a side to argue that they could have won had they played other people, I did just squeak out Ben, which works out pretty well in terms of the fact that we're both 4-3, and it comes down to just tiebreakers. You're going to hear that a little bit more as we go on. Ben put up a notable fight here, especially late run with Gibbs. He was the running back 1. And defenses, you'll note, we were not in the top 5 on defenses, and we scored this many. There was actually, you're going to see a few high-scoring defenses along the way. If we check out the bench, Ben, you made most of the right calls. Addison might have helped you out. Him over a Metcalf or a Breece Hall would not. I mean, it would have made it a lot closer, but I don't think that would have really cashed it in. Would have been real close, though, and made me sweat. I had CMC and Judkins here as running backs 2 and 4, respectively. That's kind of it for my big hitters, but like I said, I did a good job with Dax and my defense. My wide receivers were a little bit of a letdown, and I did have some people on the bench I also could have put in to make me sweat just slightly less, but either way, like I said, pretty pivotal matchup. Points scored, again, going to be a huge factor. So I was pretty happy to get this W over Ben, because if it finished today, we both would be in the playoffs. I'm extremely scared that I have awoken the bear. Yes, I did reach out to Mark. No, he didn't need a full roster to beat me last week, which is kind of a kick in the nards. But he also didn't need a full roster to win this week. Also a kick in the nards. Just for Mark's purposes, though, you had the quarterback 1 in Bo Nix. You did have the wide receiver 5, Olave, on your bench, and a decent quarterback option, and Ramondre. So your team's actually looking okay if you start managing it. And maybe, you had a tight end. You could have put it in. You're allowed to. I don't know if Mark's aware, but you are allowed to. Horst, I don't know, buddy. It's just sometimes the dark cloud that follows a team. Collins gets hurt. Mike Evans, I don't even want to make a joke about that injury. Broke a collarbone, looked like he knocked himself almost out and got a concussion on the same play. If you were watching that game, it was one of that dive, roll, no movement. It did not look awesome. So unfortunately, he came back just to get hurt again. And I don't know if we see him for the rest of the year. I haven't actually heard all of the reports as of yet. This is about as low a score as you're going to get without actually, with dressing a full roster, because you had the injuries, because your defense just kind of got pwned here with the -1, and just you didn't even have a kicker show up in a game that they scored 22. So that's a rough game. You did have Stafford as your lone bright spot. He was the quarterback 4 on the week. So this is as low as you're going to get. You are not out of it yet, but Horst, you better start a run soon, buddy, because you know how things are going to go. Mark, like I said, did we awaken the dragon? If you come back and make the playoffs and win this damn thing, I'm going to regret sending the message. A battle of the former middle school ISB math department here. B, you held on tight against Jake. And Jake, this is a pretty pivotal one. Like I said, I am still focusing on playoffs because we are more than half the way home. And this one would have set you aside. You would have jumped ahead here. So a bit of an underperformance on yours. And you can see roughly where that kind of came to be. You did have a few people show up. Just not necessarily everybody you needed. In fact, you're only one that rang the top 5. D2, Mighty Ducks down here, was on your bench in Houston. So that may have helped you, but if you take a look and just do some quick math, not enough, because B actually put up a pretty good fight. Weirdly enough, there's a bunch of QBs that we did not have in our top 5 people did not start. So Mahomes was one of the top 5 started. I think he was the QB 6. A.J. Brown, that stinks because he was the wide receiver 3, and now he's hurt. Sorry, buddy. He has just been the bad kind of a roller coaster ride for you pretty much all year. Your bench, Nick's so good, so you made all the right decisions. Big win for you, B, because now you're in that cusp of just on the surface, so it's really going to depend on matchups for you heading forward. Jake, still in the playoffs if it ended today, but that would have been a big one for you. It always sounds like I'm taking a dig here, but I am not. Will, you were the lowest scoring team that still won. And hey, who cares? I would take it. Your running backs didn't really necessarily show up. Oh, Warren actually seems to be quite a bit of a steal here. New England was kind of your bright spot. It was the defense 3. And if we take a look at your bench, you made mostly the right calls except for the one I am circling aggressively. Herbert was the QB2. Can't necessarily blame you. Hurts is usually doing a bit more, and it's not like he stunk the joint up. Unlike on Chaz's side, Caleb Williams was not your guy. Your running backs did just fine. And actually your kicker, there you go, is the second scoring kicker. We haven't heard a whole lot of them. Some of the kickers that scored big, not ones that we actually housed this team. The Minnesota kicker was the number 1, and I do not believe anyone had him. On your bench, you had some options. Now, it could have made a difference because this one did come down to the short strokes, just over 10 points. So we could go and do some math and maybe see if you could have manipulated things. But unfortunately for you, you didn't, buddy, because that would have been a big one as well. You're seeing the scores kind of pan out. I know I just gave the pep talk. You've been in this spot before. You know you're going to need to win more than you lose on the way out. Whereas V, kind of slowly, sneakily getting your way in. You are our 2nd seed right now. Pretty huge, buddy, because if it ended today, that means you get a bye. Crazy 3 through 6 are all tied, so I keep saying, and look at the points. We are not looking at a lot of points that distinguish. In fact, here, we're talking decimal points, but even top to bottom, less than 40 all day. So that's pretty significant. And like I said, bottom kind of rung here, you are still very, very much in the fight, but you don't want to wait too much longer, especially if Waylon keeps pumping the gas like he has been. Let's see who drew him next week. So another pretty pivotal matchup here. Bam, we got a 1 versus 2. Love it when this happens. Very, very important matchups, especially during Buyapalooza. I don't know. Can't wait, folks. Heading into the second half, so our back 9 or back 7 as it were. I've mentioned it a couple times. Buyapalooza is upon us, the first and only 6-team bye week. That means there's definitely going to be some people starting that we don't necessarily always want to have starting. Touchdowns are going to mean more than ever before. Gotta love it. Right in the belly of the beast. So if you are in a position where you are advantageous, congratulations, but now it's your job to hold on tight. The rest of us, every win's going to matter, so let's get after it. Good luck this week, everybody.